So there we go. So welcome, Jason. I'm going to invite you to just take a moment and relax. And see if by taking a few breaths, you can allow your mind to let go of the ideas about how you wanted to do this session, why you wanted to do it, and find something that softly bubbles to the top.
I guess the mind in connection to the lower self, the true lower.
So can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, having delved further within myself, I feel like I've got to a point of understanding necessarily, why and where things come from. There's still sometimes the ability to just be totally not misguided, but it is a misguide, or hoodwinked by the lower self.
Okay.
And almost that dualistic dialogue that happens between your mind and your body. Ultimately, you become a slave to your body, which is just pumped from chemicals from your mind. So it's that sort of it's a kind of vicious circle, really. But I think it's deeper than that, because I see a vicious circle and see the processes behind that.
So let me ask you a few questions because I'm curious. Do you believe that your body lies to you?
I believe, I don't just believe, I know that your mind lies to you because of your sensory understanding of things around you. And in process of that, your part of your brain, particularly the central part, then fills your body full of chemicals. And I think you become needful to those chemicals. And those chemicals become a part of you, and ultimately they're the formation of your lower self, as I see it.
Okay. So this feels like what I call a tangle. And that is that one idea starts off on the wrong foot and then goes on and on and on, but it's already started off on the wrong foot. So what I'd like to explain to you is a different perspective of what you just described. Okay? The mind receives sensory input, that is true. But the mind makes an interpretation. The mind is not clean and pure. Okay? It is in the interpretation that we start off on the wrong foot. Okay? So sensory input is sensory input. That's like the grass is green and the sun is shining and the dog is barking. And I am angry and I have not got enough time to do what I'm doing. Those are all the stressors. Okay? But the mind takes those in and weaves a story.
Absolutely.
Okay. Once the mind weaves a story, then it directs some of these chemicals.
It directs all those chemicals.
No, not all of them. Okay. Some of the chemicals in your body are involuntary.
Absolutely.
Okay. Some of them are voluntary.
Yes.
Okay. So when the body feels attacked, it will release adrenaline. You can't stop it.
No, yeah.
Okay.
We're in agreement on all that. Yeah.
But when the mind feels attacked, it can trigger the release of adrenaline. And then the body is the prisoner of the mind because the body's full of chemicals.
And that's exactly what I was talking about. And it's just then those chemicals become patterns and then formations of your being, if you like, and formations of your lower self that become quite difficult. Almost like they become subconscious patterns that you have to rethink and restart again, reprogram.
But the reason I'm differentiating between voluntary and involuntary, okay, is the involuntary is very difficult for you to control.
But the involuntary side of me, you're talking about mechanics of my heart beating. I was thinking more of the involuntary side of me having repeated a process of hiding a part of myself or defending a part of myself so many times that it becomes involuntary. But it's a program.
I'm not going to use the word involuntary just because you've gotten used to it.
Sure.
Okay, so it's very important to differentiate what you can control and what you can't control. If you give in and you say, I can't control any of this, then you're a victim.
No, and I'm not disputing that and not disagreeing on that.
Right. But that's what I'm doing is I'm trying to back up a little bit. It may be true that there are habits that have become established. We still have control.
Ultimately, yes.
Okay. The lower self invites us to see where this control is really hard to get back. The lower self invites us to see how hard it would be to change our habits and how they don't cause that much harm anyway.
So that you can get away with them.
And that's the slippery slope.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to discuss or say.
Right. But what I'm saying is, even in our choice of words, it is really important to differentiate what we can control and what we cannot control. Even if we're not controlling it in the moment.
But doesn't our focus create the moment?
Let me think of an example. Let's say something is illegal. Okay? Just because I want to do it doesn't make it legal.
I'm not following that example.
Okay. That's okay. Just because I don't want to bother in the moment doesn't mean I can't bother. It means I don't want to bother. That's a choice.
But whether we want to or don't want to, it's a choice anyway. So you're always focusing. It's just whether you're focusing on the right bit or the wrong bit to create whatever it is that you're creating or destroying.
Right. Okay. So this work is about raising our awareness of where we have choices, even if we don't bother to use them.
For sure.
Okay. So when someone says it's involuntary because it's a habit, that's giving away your authority and your power just because you're used to it.
And that's the bit that I meant, that there's a part, almost like a dualistic part, which is somewhat schizophrenic in a way, that allows you, or debates with you, or you know, gives you justification for maybe doing stuff that you don't want to do, or you know, repeating a bad habit, or doing the thing that's wrong, or whatever it might be, you know.
Okay. So Jason, if you were in a room and there were two of you, okay, and the other person said, we should be mean because it's fun, what would you say?
I'd say, why are we being mean to ourselves?
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen in the inner discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. So the existence of that voice is not a justification for not doing something about it. Agreed, it is difficult and confusing and sometimes uncomfortable.
It's damn right annoying, really.
Pardon?
It's just damn right annoying.
Yes. And again, what this work is about is realizing that we have reduced the annoyance by giving in sometimes. Just like we reduce the annoyance of a child's voice by giving it what it's asking for, without consciously making a decision about whether the child should or should not have the food, the toy, the permission. And I think that that is what you're describing as habit. So let me see if this analogy works. Let's say what the guide describes is that inside all of us is a little greedy kid that just wants everything now.
For sure.
And that kid inside us makes so much noise that we just want to shut it up. So we have gotten in the habit of giving in whenever it screams. Just like you have seen parents give a child whatever it wants just to shut it up.
I think we've all done that.
But that child is us, and we're not doing our job in parenting that part of us.
Absolutely.
To help that part grow up. We're doing the equivalent of raising a spoiled brat. And the day you decide, I'm not going to do that anymore, the child is naturally going to throw the biggest tantrum ever. Naturally. Because it knows that it has always gotten what it wanted by screaming louder and louder and louder until you give in. And so taking charge is going to be uncomfortable for a while.
It's that reinforcement that needs to continually happen, really.
Mm-hmm. Until the habit has been reversed, until the habit is to be mature and responsible. Let me try this one. I try different metaphors until one hits. You've got a puppy that pees on the carpet. This makes for a difficult adult lifestyle. To keep the puppy from peeing on the carpet, you may have to pay a lot of attention to it for a while and do many walks a day. And that interferes with your freedom and your schedule. But that's how you train a puppy. And even when the puppy grows into a dog, it needs to be walked once or twice a day.
I understand.
Well, what I'm saying is that when you were in your 20s, did you keep a perfectly neat apartment? Or was it a little messy?
I think always a little bit.
A little bit messy. Most of us are a little messy in our 20s.
I quite like my things in order.
Yeah.
Maybe OCD there.
And later we get tired of the mess. And we do the dishes, and we do the laundry, and we do the cleaning. Because we value order more than so-called freedom. And we find freedom within order.
We've spoken about this before. The freedom is actually the illusion. It's the order that gives the freedom.
Yep. Yep. To a mature adult. But there are phases in life where freedom does involve destruction, deconstruction, breaking free, trying new things. So it's not an dualistic. It's not dualism.
No, it's an ebb and flow that happens
Right.
at points in your life, and both are valid.
Right.
Both need each other.
So that's what I'm describing between the mind and the body. We're not inviting the mind to take over everything. But just because the body says, maybe I'm being attacked, does not mean that the mind should make a specific decision. So it's a rebalancing of the messages and the control. That make sense?
Yeah, very much so.
So does that address your original question?
Yeah, because I guess it's probably the child that asks the question anyway.
It might be. So take a breath for a moment and let that go. And see what comes up next.
Again, in connection with that, it's the need to love.
Okay.
or be loved.
So could you say a bit more about that? How does that manifest? How does a difficulty with that manifest for you?
I think it's more about the aspect of not getting the adoration, or sometimes the love that you want.
Okay.
And the negative effects that can have in your reaction to things. Being very aware of watching that now. I mean, these are things that I'm aware of, and it's observing them and becoming. Yeah, it's exactly the same pattern as the previous question, if you like.
It is, and I want to differentiate here again. What I hear is I hear the child's voice, but I hear it being spoken by an adult ego.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, when I say that's progress, I don't mean progress in you. What I mean is we need to give ourselves credit for holding the child's question. Okay. So when a statement like that comes up, that's not purely the child. That's the adult saying, but I've got this need. What do I do with this other part of me that has a need?
Yeah, I mean, before it was something very different.
Okay.
I wouldn't have interpreted it like that, but now I do.
Okay.
I can see it for what it is now. I think it's
Right.
a bit like the question before.
So the first thing is to artificially separate. I say artificially because we are all one, and these are just ways of working. Okay? So it's helpful to talk about this part of you as if it was separate. And this part of you thinks that being adored is a solution.
It's not even a solution, it's more of a status, actually, as I've understood it now.
Well, gaining a certain status is a solution to not feeling loved.
Yeah, for sure.
So what I'm saying is no matter what it is meant to solve a problem, a lack. Okay?
Which is exactly what we were speaking about a minute ago with, if you like, a third-party voice, which is yourself.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is your adult is holding a container for this part of you that thinks that being adored would solve its pain.
But I don't have that feeling or understanding anymore. It's just something that I can see that I do. So that's different.
Well, if you do it, then there must be some, even if it's faint, some faint need.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that comes down to the original thing that I was trying to ask, which was, so at what point do you stop with this?
You don't.
There has to be some exhaustive moment where you just release. Maybe that's your last breath.
That's not my experience.
Sorry?
That's not my experience. My experience is that this is an ongoing process. And we simply become more competent, more loving, and more enlightened about it.
And that's the point that I've come to so I can see all these compartments or containers that have been stored within various facets of my psyche, but I'd like to think, I guess that's just it's a gradual reprogramming process, I guess.
It is a very gradual reprogramming process. But what I heard is, I said, what did you want to talk about or work on? And you said the need to love and be loved, not getting the adoration.
Yeah, it's that. It's because it's a baseline that pumps through everything.
Okay.
Which, you know, I don't feel the need to go back and go through all the stuff that I did with you know, parents and mother and father and all that sort of kind of thing. We've done that many times before, and I don't have a need to go back there. It's just almost a point where it's just like, oh, for God's sake, it's just this boring, you know, baseline that continues rather than. And what is that? What is it that I'm missing?
Okay.
To allow.
That's okay. I get it now. What I think you're missing is this. The part of you that wants to be adored is under the illusion that it's not adored. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. This is spiritual work. This is not how to get along with your coworkers, how to get along with your family. In the spiritual reality that we exist within, you are adored. You are admired, you are adored, you are valued, and you are important. However, on the planet, that may not manifest in a way that is evident to you. So what I am saying is there are two realities. One is the larger spiritual reality, and the other is feeling it on a personality level.
Then there's feeling it, which is what I think I'm talking about, which is not the personality level. It's below that. It's the lower level.
Okay. But what I'm saying is that the lower level has what word am I looking for? Not power, influence. The lower level has influence because the larger level is not held in your consciousness.
For long enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the exhaustive point that I've come to. It's just like, I want that to be there for longer now. Okay. Maybe that's the tipping point.
Right. But instead of it being exhaustive, what if it's just a matter of opening up and letting a different reality in? In other words, instead of reaching for it.
But that's my real question, is just what is that tipping point?
Okay. The tipping point is different for everyone. Yours may feel like exhaustion. Other people's will feel differently. It's unique. What I hear from you is that you are able to differentiate lower self-impulses.
Yes.
But you don't seem to have the strength, the easy, graceful strength to say, oh, sweetie, that's silly, I'm not doing that.
Basically.
Right. What I'm saying is the ability to say, oh, that's the silliest thing I ever heard of, go away, comes from familiarity and access to the world of reality where you matter, where you are adored, where you are appreciated. And without that connection, that spiritual connection, the lower voice sometimes can be very seductive. So Jason, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and find the place in you that you rely upon as the center of your being. Okay? It's different for different people. I know different modalities say it's here, there, the other. Just whatever works for you. And ask if you are loved.
I know it.
Okay. Now, ask if you're adored.
The question is, do I adore myself?
Exactly. Loved is easy. Adored is somebody has to adore you. How about you?
It's a good start.
Mm-hmm. So this is a perfect example of looking outwardly for something that if we give it to ourselves, we won't have to look for it outwardly. So I am going to take a 2-second break, and I am going to go over to the other computer because I am beginning to practice what I call a practice of obeying the lecture, The Power of the Word. There we go. And I am suddenly curious what it means to adore. Okay, you ready for this? Adore means to worship as God or as a God. Certainly you have heard the phrase, the God within.
Yes.
We can adore that part. But that's right next door to the place where we want to be a God and inspire adoration from others, where we want to be worshipped. That's not as clean. Can you guess why? You're not expressing a desire to adore others as you wish to be adored. This is not mutual.
So it's one way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's why it's not loving, and that's why it tends to go into distortion rather than the pure form of it. So everything is a yin-yang. You know the yin-yang symbol?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything's yin-yang. It can be good, it can be bad, depends on what you do with it. To want to be adored can be a positive thing if we're willing to adore in return. And we adore first and notice it's not coming back to us. That would be one thing. So if I express love daily, weekly, monthly, to as many people as I can, and I get no sign of love in return, I would need to look at that. Something's not right. But if I said, I want to be loved, you love me, and then I will love you, there's something wrong with that.
Agreed and understood, actually.
Mm-hmm. So that's why the guide says, look in your heart first. Where do you not adore yourself or others, and yet demand it?
I think it's always about the self, isn't it?
Let me put it this way.
Map of yourself in order to get it from someone else.
I think that in some phases of our work, it is easier to see a distortion in somebody else than in ourselves. But the solution is always in ourselves.
No, I mean, as in the lack of love for ourselves, we look into someone else to fill that gap for us.
Yes. And what I am saying is that you can also resolve the distortion by saying, I wish to be adored, so I'll do it first. I will adore, I will love, I will give, I will support. And if you do that with an open heart, eventually you will include yourself. It works either way you want to do it. But if you're not included, it won't work. For instance, if someone truly did adore you, you might very well reject them because you don't feel you deserve it until you adore yourself and adore them back.
I guess that's why it's so easy to love children.
Can be.
The interesting thing is the dynamic when everybody's distorted in a certain way or shape, and then the two are interacting.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got, because it would be simpler if it was just one person to fix, but I guess that is the only person you can work on. So you all have that, but it's the other distortions that come out between two in the mix, or four in the mix, or six in the mix. Or
There's a comradeship in that. Can you feel it?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the process, isn't it? Really?
Mm-hmm. And in the most generous sense, there's an invitation to not feel so alone and so bad just because we're working on something.
It would certainly make the place a less hostile environment.
That is true, but to be here on the earth, we're actually at work here. We're not supposed to lay back with a lemonade. So what I'm saying is, this is like a working environment spiritually. And there is pleasure, but it's not intended to be continuous, uninterrupted pleasure. We can get that in the spirit world. Here we have an opportunity to see our distortions in action. Bit of line noise there.
Sorry?
It was a bit of line noise there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel quite calm about the whole thing, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just nothing you don't know. Just sometimes it's nice to have a couple of sentences underlined so that you can just maybe reread them a couple of times and just sit with them.
Mm-hmm. So remember what I said, the spirit's always there. The spirit world is always there. Our awareness of it needs to be cultivated. And there's not only no harm, it is the way human beings work to keep reminding ourselves, either through affirmations, quotes on our computer, the wallpaper behind our computer, the pictures on our walls, the books on our shelves, the friends we keep, the programs we watch, the work we do. All of these things can reflect who we are. And I mean that in the deepest possible positive sense.
Absolutely.
And there will be reminders of where we need to do some work. So take a breath or two and see if there's anything else we want to explore.
I'm not sure, really. I think it's almost exactly as you said, that this session is like an affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much something that I didn't know, but just maybe an affirmation just to say, okay, because it's easy to get disheartened.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was the initial part of my statement to you. It's just like, when does it stop? And it's not necessarily about stopping, is it? I guess it's more about you can take a breath and look at the view from the position of the mountain, on the mountain that you are, which isn't at the bottom anymore.
So let me put this into a different terminology. Are you weary of cleaning your body? You have to do it all the time. It never stops. Or is it most of the time a very pleasurable activity?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Okay. That's what I'm referring to. Just like our skin creates debris and we want it to be rinsed off, and the oils secrete into our hair and we want to start fresh. If we take that benign view of our spiritual process, that we're bringing stuff up to the surface and letting it go, and bringing it up and letting it go, then the question, when will this end, it doesn't make any sense. I guess when we die. And what the guide teaches is that on this planet, because of the construct of the planet, our skin will always need attention, and our spirit will always need cleansing on a personality level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you just put those two side by side, you can say, when is my hair going to stop growing? I don't need that anymore. Well, it doesn't really. When will my skin stop needing attention? When you die. When will my spiritual cleansing process be done? Well, this format in the human psyche, when you stop being human. And like washing your body, it can be very joyous. So I hear the mature adult ego asking these questions. And I think that the tipping point has already been reached for you. By making that discernment.
I guess that there's still the format, if you like, or the old format, which just beats myself up.
Mm-hmm.
Saying it's still not there, or still needs to reinforce itself. And even if I do slip up, whatever that might be, however it takes its form in a silly cigarette or a silly comment or a whatever it might be. It's the
So you notice the cigarette and you notice the comment either during the comment or 2 minutes later or 5 minutes later or a day later. It doesn't really matter when you notice it. The important thing is that you notice it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't even get a day's break now. It's usually instantaneous.
That is a lot of progress. You don't spend 5 years entangled in something before you
Yeah.
get back.
No, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Come a long way.
Yeah. So does that feel complete for you in the moment?
I think so. Yeah.
So I want to thank you for permitting this session to be recorded.
I don't know if I'm holding back because of that or not, but I don't think I am, because I have a smile on my face as I'm talking. So.
It's okay. You may be holding back, and you were honest. We don't need the whole truth splattered all over. Yeah. So we're always on our best behavior when people are watching us. That's the way we are. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's about that. No, it's not. I don't. I'm not it's not. That's not what I meant by holding back. I don't know whether I'm just not acknowledging something, a question that I'd want to ask, but I genuinely don't feel I need to ask anything at the moment. Anyway. So, I mean, the questions that I've asked are the processes that my psyche is going through, or the questions that I'm asking myself. So
So you're welcome to ask them. You can email me. It's not the end of the world. So it was just a little
if I think
recorded session.
for sure.
Okay. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You take good care. It'll be best for you.
We'll speak again.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.